Yo, good afternoon. How's it going? Don't mind me, I'm taking a few moments to make sure that I'm actually not messing this up. What's up, dude? Welcome to the stream. This is my very first stream, so I hope you're ready to watch me mess everything up all the time. There's so much going on my monitors right now, it's kind of absurd. How's the audio and the quality and stuff, guys? Let me try messing with my gain a bit then. I tend to have my microphone relatively low just because it's easier to record that way because I don't have to worry about peaking. But let me turn it up a bit. Is this any better? I guess I could turn it up a bit more too. I'm also just naturally a quiet and soft speaker, so. Alright, sweet. So there's probably just going to be a bunch of background noise simply because I have my desktop is on the desk next to my microphone, and then I have like one of those like standing coolers that you've seen like gas stations in my room, and that is like always on because it's keeping stuff cold. I might move that to the other side of my bedroom at some point so that it's, you know, not disruptive. But that's why I take a bunch of time to clean up my audio after I record something so that there's not a bunch of background noise. But that's not really something I can do right now, unfortunately. All right. Well, if the audio is okay, I think we should just dive into this. Alright, so for the most part, I have the characters, well, I had the characters lined up based on when we meet them, but I guess whenever I, I guess whenever I made it into presentation mode, it decided to completely obliterate all that. So I guess we're just gonna go whichever character comes up at a time. So as you guys can see, I have of course S class at the top, well S rank, not class. I decided that there's a lot of characters in Yu Yu Hakusho that are kind of, they're not bad characters, but there's no point in ranking them. So I decided to go with a couple of extra tiers, such as irrelevant but neat, and then just plain irrelevant. Because as much as I do love this show, a lot of these characters kind of depend on one another for relevancy. And there are a lot of characters that I'm just like, who even are you? Like, whose man's is this? So we're going to keep that in mind whenever we're going. And feel free to chime in. Like, if you guys have opinions on certain characters, feel free to let me know what you guys think, because, I mean, my opinion's not the end-all be-all of Yu Yu Hakusho. I'm just someone that cares a little too much. That's all. Alright, so we've got Game Master up first, Amanuma. So I actually think Amanuma is a C-tier character, and that's based entirely on his proximity to Sensui and Team Urameshi, because the Goblin City thing is actually my favorite part of Chapter Black, which I remember saying in my video essay. I like the idea of Amanuma being a kid that's just kind of still learning about the world, and he's very much in his rebellious phase. He's like, oh, my mom and dad don't pay enough attention to me, and simultaneously not really understanding that adults aren't always the wisest of people, or at least they're not always trustworthy. If you can't tell, this is going to be entirely unscripted, because Lord knows I wasn't going to write a script for an entire tier list character. This is just going to be me rambling for the next however long this takes, so just bear with me, I guess. With everything that goes on with Amanuma during Goblin City, and how he kind of realizes too late that trusting Sensui was a bad thing, and how that affects Kurama, I think that firmly places him in C tier. Like, I feel like for me, lower B and upper C tier characters are kind of like middle of the road characters. They're like, you don't dislike them, but you don't love them. They're just kind of like, oh yeah, that's cool. These people are, you know, doing what they're supposed to. They service the story, I guess. That's a fair way to put that. Next up is Atsuko, Yusuke's mom. And she's just plain irrelevant. I like her for what she does in terms of how she bounces off Yusuke in the beginning. But unlike someone like Shizuru, she just vanishes from the story entirely. She's only relevant during Yusuke's first episode. Hey man, like, if you, I mean, however long ago you watched Yu Yu Hakusho is mostly irrelevant. I just I'm just here to enjoy any take anyone has. This is just for fun. This isn't to be taken seriously. So if you have a take, regardless of how recently or how many times you've seen the show, feel free to just, you know, throw it out there. I'm perfectly fine. The moment when he realized he was going to die was an incredible moment. Yeah, it's kind of a bleak moment in terms of how things go overall, because that's something anime doesn't usually hit on, especially in the early 90s, is children dying. Like, children dying in media in general is just not something that's typically hit on, especially in video games. But to take a character that's mostly innocent and then drop them in a situation where they're faced with their own mortality, because children don't think about dying. Like, I didn't think about dying when I was a kid, and it's a miracle that I'm alive now. Wasn't she... So, I'm going to be completely transparent. I haven't read the manga in a long time. A very long time. Like, back when Shonen Jump was still super, super popular here in the West. Like, hell, I remember when Naruto and Bleach started debuting in Shonen Jump. That's how long ago that was. Like, I was a middle schooler when I started reading Yu Yu Hakusho. I know it differs from the anime in several key ways. Like, I remember in the beginning, there was much more to the Spirit Detective arc than just Rando. There was, like, Yusuke, even before he got his body back, he was going around helping people. I almost made a reference to a 90s show, but I'm like, I don't know who would understand this reference. But it was kind of like this old Nickelodeon show, 100 Good Deeds of Eddie McDowd, where Yusuke had to go around helping people before he could really get his body back. It wasn't just here's a couple of anime trials and then you get your body back. But I really don't remember much about the manga, so I'm going to have to go back and reread that. But I'm still in the middle of reading Berserk, so that might take a while. Atsuko is one of those characters that's just, I wanted her to be more relevant, especially as the mother character, but you know, the one thing about the manga that sticks out for me distinctly, I have this very distinct memory of this one chapter where Yusuke's helping this this shy kid that's a boxer. That's all I remember. I just remember there's a kid that was kind of shy and kind of a loser and a boxer, or he wanted to be a boxer, and Yusuke's like, I'm going to do the thing. No, I'm pretty sure 100 Good Deeds was Nickelodeon. But yeah, it was the one where the dude was, the bully was turned into a dog. Yeah. It was a weird show. Was it Disney? I'm pretty sure it was Nickelodeon. I could be wrong though, don't quote me on that. I never finished that show. I don't even know if it got a complete run, but whatever. Next up is Bakken. Bakken is a D tier character for me. I like him only because of what he draws out of Yusuke in that moment where Yusuke was more willing to defend Kurama and fight everyone in the stadium than let it go down the way it was going down. And of course, he was brutalizing my boy. Like, it's no secret that Kurama is my favorite character. Hell, I have Yusuke and Kurama tattooed on me. Maybe when the Three Kings video comes out, I'll showcase because I have a whole anime sleeve on my left arm, and maybe I'll showcase that in my Three Kings video. I like Bakken design-wise. I think the scars are kind of cool, I guess, in a really dumb way. But where he loses me is his sweat fog, whatever that's about. I don't know. Like, it's not exactly the most entrancing thing, you know. It's just kind of there. So we get to move on from Bakken. Botan, I feel, is like a legitimate B tier character because she's actually relevant. Like, she does stuff, she helps out, she's charming, she has a great design. There's really not much to say about Botan except that she's like the older sister character that actually tries to help out and stick around. Sometimes she's an exposition machine, but that's okay. She never gets old or annoying. Everything about her is just fun. Even during the Dark Tournament, when she's kind of like the team coach in a way, and she gets into it with Kodo every now and then, that was pretty funny to me. I really like Botan as a character. Speaking of Kodo, whoever put this tier list together, because full transparency, again, I wasn't the one that put this together. I was trying to, and I had 77 characters on my tier list, including characters whose names you don't hear in the anime, like the characters from Team Gorenjia. But I also had Koto and Juri on my list, and I don't see Koto or Juri anywhere in here, and that's kind of a crime to me, because I love Koto. Juri, not so much. Juri's like a D tier character, if I'm being honest, but love Koto. You'd arbitrarily put her in A tier. You're right, she is endearing. Hey, what's up, buddy? How's it going, Goten? So I have you guys on my third monitor, so I have to kind of like lean over because my eyesight is terrible. But welcome to the stream, buddy. This is my first stream, so enjoy whatever nonsense comes out of this. Feel free to pitch in if there's any opinions you have on characters, or if there's any questions you want to ask about like upcoming video. I can't say much about the Three Kings video because I have a couple of surprises, but yeah, feel free to just chat and hang out. But yeah, I agree with you. Botan is just endearing overall. Bui is kind of a tricky one for me. Because Bui has a really good design. I think, unironically, Bui has the best design of everyone in Team Toguro. But unlike someone like Karasu, he doesn't get a lot of build-up. He's just kind of the Shredder of, because he looks like Shredder from TMNT. Like there's no getting around that. I don't think Bui is I think Bui's a D tier character. I really want to put Bui higher. Yes, I always watch Yu Yu Hakusho dubbed. The English dub, I feel like, is actually insanely good. Also, there's probably going to be a bit of lag between when you guys say stuff and when I reply to that. That's just how the streaming situation goes, I guess. We'll get used to it. We'll acclimate, you know. But I don't think Bui ascends any higher than D tier, simply because he doesn't get any build up the way Karasu does. Oh, no worries, dude. I agree. Without his armor, Bui looks so stupid. So stupid. The armor is what makes him cool. I do like the backstory to him trying to get away from trying to kill Team Toguro. Well, I say Team Toguro, but it's just the Toguro brothers, and then getting overpowered and be like, hey, if you want to get stronger, you better stick with us, because we'll make you hate us so much that you try to get strong. Like it's one of those takes on keep your friends close but your enemies closer thing. Yeah, dude, the dub is unironically incredible. It's probably one of my favorite dubs of all time. Right up there with Fullmetal Alchemist 2003 and Brotherhood. And Cowboy Bebop has Cowboy Bebop has an incredible dub. A lot of anime from the late 90s, early 2000s have very good dubs. But I feel like that's because Funimation back then had like 5 voice actors that they just made do everything. Whereas nowadays, I don't like watching stuff dubbed. I think the last thing I watched dubbed that I enjoyed was probably Death Note, because I got so used to watching things subbed because they were available sooner that it became difficult for me to get to a point where I could go back to, you know, just enjoying people being dubbed. The accent of Unicorn Wind Bendy guy from the tournament was incredible. Yeah, Jin was a lovely character. Let's move on to the first of the Saint Beasts, Byakko. Byakko, you know, I'm willing to put him in D tier. You know, I feel like we should expand D tier. So we'll put a row below it. Change this to green. Nope, wrong one. Because I think we're going to have a lot of D tier characters. I heard Hunter x Hunter had a strangely good French dub. I have a love-hate relationship with Hunter x Hunter. Byakko, like I was saying, he's okay, I guess. He's like just a big cat. The gimmick kind of gets old when it's like, I'm a cat. I do cat things, like this projectile hairball that destroys stuff. The only thing that really sticks out to me from the fight with Byakko is when Kuwabara uses his spirit sword as like a pole vault and punches Byakko into like the lava beneath him. And I don't remember the exact quote, but Kuwabara says something like, let's go to hell together, and proceeds to, you know, quote unquote fall into the lava with him. I thought that was a cool moment. Furry representation. Oh my goodness. Yeah, is Byakko the only furry on this list? Yeah. Now that I'm looking over the list, yeah, Byakko, it's like the only furry. Okay. Hunter x Hunter, I feel like Hunter x Hunter is overrated. And I know I'm in the minority on that one. I feel like Yu Yu Hakusho is a better package than Hunter x Hunter in certain ways. I like the characters from Yu Yu Hakusho more. I like Yusuke more than Gon. I think Gon is too pure of a character until the Chimera Ant arc. I feel like Gon doesn't even really go through an arc until damn near the end of the series. I feel like Killua would have been a way more interesting main character. Leorio is also mostly irrelevant. The York Shin arc is really, really good. I didn't care for like the Hunter exam or any of that stuff. The York Shin arc and then the Chimera Ant arc are both good. I didn't care for Greed Island. Yeah, I know I'm in the minority on that one. I know a lot of people love Hunter x Hunter, but I'm just like, because I watched Yu Yu Hakusho first, and it just feels like Yu Yu Hakusho 1.5. I don't know. The world building is better though. I mean, the thing about foreshadowing is it has to be done well for it to pay off. And I don't think that the hints of darkness in Gon were foreshadowed well enough, because he was there to bounce off of everyone else in the sense that every other character had their moments, and it was Gon that was like, oh, but you can be good, and you can be better, and yada yada yada. And it just, characters like that stay flat for way too long. The most I can say about Gon is that he exists until Kite dies. And then depending on which version of Hunter x Hunter you watch, even that doesn't hit as hard, because if you watch the revival series, they don't introduce Kite at the beginning. And that's weird to me. But whatever. Let's move on. I don't want to get sidetracked by Hunter x Hunter. Though we can do a Hunter x Hunter tier list at some point, because I will say I do like the characters. Chu, I feel, is easily a B tier character. Yeah, I mean, listen, I don't hate Hunter x Hunter. Like, let me not say that, because Hunter x Hunter deserves plenty of praise in its own right. I do think, yeah, Togashi does kind of have the same problem as Akira Toriyama, where he would just do stuff. And I feel like Hunter x Hunter suffers right now from the fact that Togashi is in relatively poor health. And it's been like, what, 3+ years since the last chapter? Which makes me sad, because I think Hunter x Hunter gets really, really good during the Chimera Ant arc and then into the Dark Continent arc. You know, my biggest problem with the Chimera Ant arc was, I love the arc, don't get me wrong, but the fact that Kurapika completely disappears, and Kurapika is my favorite character. But that's why I like the Dark Continent chapters so much, because it's all about Kurapika. And of course, Togashi's on like an extended hiatus. So Chu, I feel, is B tier only because okay, this one I'm kind of splitting hairs here. You know what? I am gonna move him up to A tier. You're right. There's really no reason for him to be B tier character, because he's a fan favorite. He's one of my favorites. He doesn't get annoying. I love his Australian accent. The humor is great. Like, just the way they introduce him is incredibly funny. The way he bounces off of Kodo is funny, and then the friendship he forms with Yusuke out of mutual respect, fantastic. Top tier. He's not quite S tier, but Enki. I think Enki is going to be the first in the irrelevant but neat category. Yeah, the Succession arc / Dark Continent arc is really, really good. Honestly, it's what kind of reinvigorated my... It kind of reinvigorated my enjoyment of Hunter x Hunter, because it's more about like the political intrigue than just, oh, I'm more powerful than that person, and this person's more powerful than this person, and I need to get stronger. But yeah, Chu is definitely our first A tier. The knife edge deathmatch is one of the best fights in the show, despite it being as short as it is. But maybe because it's short, it makes it so much better. All right, moving on. I'm just gonna do these three together. M1. Where I wish these were still in order. I just saw his big dumb forehead. Where is it? There's M3. Dude, this is why I have this in order. Am I just not seeing him? Where's M2? Whatever. M1, M2, and M3. Oh, I was looking right at him. I'm so dumb. Oh my goodness. M1, M2, and M3 are... I like them because of the story purposes with Kuwabara. They themselves aren't necessarily interesting characters. I like M1's attacks. Like the golden rings are actually kind of cool. I love how behind the chat is now. I can always tell how far behind you guys are based on like what you're responding to, and it's kind of funny to me. I didn't really care for M2's, I guess, like invisible bombs or whatever. And M3 looks like that one character. I cannot remember. He looks like you know, it doesn't even matter. It doesn't matter. But the way they service Kuwabara's story is more interesting than they themselves. They don't even have good designs. They're mostly just there, you know? But whatever. Moving on to Gamma. I feel like Gamma is a D tier character in the sense that he also isn't terribly interesting aside from his makeup. What makes Gamma interesting is how he services the story in the sense of what he does to Kurama. Because honestly, I kind of laughed the first time I watched the dub and it was like, oh, your power is makeup? Okay. Weird flex, but okay. But then when he bound Kurama's arms and legs with makeup that kind of made him feel like he was being held down by weights, and then bound his spirit energy inside, well, I guess his demon energy inside of him, that was cool. Because it made us appreciate more just how smart Kurama is and like how he can think on his feet even when he's in danger. Stuff like that is dope. And then and then Kurama just completely dismembers the guy. And that was savage. Kurama didn't even blink. He's like, hey man, like maybe don't do that. But of course Gamma got the last laugh there, and that was neat. And then how that affects Kurama's fights going forward. So in the Just Plain Irrelevant, there's this guy whose name is Gao, I think. He's one of the original members of Team... What the hell is their team name? I can't remember the name of the team. The team that Rinku and all of them are on. I'm blanking on it right now. But him and... Where's the guy? This guy. This guy's name is Imagine. But yeah, they're both just there to get scared after Zero gets roasted and then get killed by Chu. So they're completely irrelevant in every single way. Genbu is also like just plain irrelevant. I don't think Genbu matters at all in terms of the Saint Beasts. I feel like everyone except Genbu is at least somewhat interested. Like even Byakuya landed in D tier. Genbu's just like, oh yeah, you're just like a rock boy, I guess. Whatever. Who cares? So that's fun. Genkai is an A tier character. I don't even feel like that's up for debate. Genkai is one of the most helpful characters. Genkai is one of the most wholesome characters. Not to mention she's strong as hell. And I love the way she bounces off of Yusuke. Yusuke's sarcasm is one of my favorite things about this show. And the fact that she can stand in the same arena as him, you know, sarcasm-wise, and then throw it right back at him with better sarcasm is great. But at the same time, she also cares about him like, you know, he's her grandson. They have a really wholesome relationship, despite how dysfunctional it also happens to be. And then her story arc, her shared story arc with Yusuke and Toguro is also very, very well fleshed out. Like the 50-year grudge is probably one of the most heartbreaking things about the Dark Tournament. Like the first time she died, well, I mean, when, you know, you think she dies, it's kind of abrupt and kind of catches you off guard because you're just like, wow, this is a super powerful character. Is the big bad really that awful? Like, are they really in that much trouble? So that's neat. What was this guy's name? Goki. I don't remember much of anything about Goki. I remember Goki biting some wood and then getting his head blown off by Yusuke. That's as far as that goes. So first up of Sensui's 7, we've got Hagure, aka Sniper. I think Sniper is a C tier character. I would say he's a lower C tier character because Amanuma's way more interesting. You didn't like Genkai, really? I didn't like Genkai at the beginning, but I think Genkai she grows over the course of the show, which is what makes her just easier to deal with. Because like I can see how like the grumpy old lady bit would get old really quickly, but I kind of took to it after a while because just like with other people on this list, her personality becomes more dynamic as the story goes on, and you can see that she really cares about the people around her despite being like a crabby old lady. Who the hell were we talking about? Oh, right, Sniper. I think Sniper has one of the coolest territories, one of the most, probably the easiest to kill someone in. He has one of the most vicious territories, but I feel like Sniper as a character is somewhat underutilized. Like his placement in C tier is entirely because of his territory. And then, you know, like I mentioned in the Chapter Black video, there's those weird mental gymnastics he jumps through when he tells Hiei that he has no quarrel with him. I remember someone in the comments was like, oh, well, he has no problem with Hiei because Hiei is a demon. But I don't think Sniper knew that, because up until that point in the story, Hiei was completely absent from everything that was going on in Chapter Black. And as we learned, Sensui isn't exactly one to tell people exactly what's going on, because he doesn't care about their life expectancy, or he doesn't really care if they try to stay alive or anything. So yeah, Hagure is just one of those characters that is cool on paper. So this might catch me some flack. So this isn't a tier list based on strength. This is a tier list based on like how interesting the character is overall. And I do feel like Sniper is more interesting than Bui, simply because he gets more screen time than Bui. He talks more than Bui. He actually has a personality. Even if it's kind of a flat personality, it's a personality. Bui doesn't become interesting until his fight with Hiei. Speaking of Hiei, yeah, he does get insta-killed by Hiei. But like I said, this isn't like a power rankings tier list. Otherwise, I'd be saying Botan is stronger than Bui. If this was a power rankings tier list, it would be entirely different. I'm not really a power scaler. That's more of like Seth the programmer type thing. Welcome to the stream though. So I might get some flack about this next one, but I think Hiei is a B tier character. And before I get blasted, let me explain. I don't think Hiei is all that interesting personality wise. I think Hiei is cool. He is cool as shit, but I don't think he is interesting. When he fights Yusuke at the beginning, that's the only time we see the extent of the Jagan Ai's powers, which I think is weird that we just never see that again. And then after that, he just becomes basically the Vegeta of the cast, but in a less dynamic way. For a long time, Hiei is just kind of there, but like the coolest thing about him is Dragon of the Darkness Flame. He just has the cool guy attitude. I think his interaction and relationship with Kurama is nice, like because they go back really far, especially if you have seen the OVA. But he doesn't really have anything interesting going on about him. He's just the guy there to deliver snarky one-liners and be an asshole. Yeah, you're right. We don't talk about the Jagan powers. In the Dark Tournament, his whole arc is, oh, my arm hurts. I need to eat the dragon. And then at the end, you know, he kind of gets to a point where he's like, maybe I should count on my my buddies or whatever. And then he disappears for most of Chapter Black. He doesn't show up until it's time to go actually stop Sensui. And even then, he doesn't really do much. Like in Chapter Black, he gets his soul taken from him. He's snarky. He disappears. He comes back because Yusuke is like, hey, you know, I'll give you the Chapter Black tape. He doesn't even want to stay for interpersonal reasons. So even by then, he's still at a point where the interpersonal relationships aren't enough to keep him around. He has to be bribed by Yusuke, which is perfectly in character. It's just not interesting. It's not until Yusuke dies and comes back that Yusuke starts to actually bloom as a character. Because, like, if you guys remember, he's genuinely upset that Yusuke gets killed. And then when he comes back, there's that moment where he says, when Yusuke's like, let me fight him by myself, he's like, knock him dead, Yusuke Urameshi, but know if you fail, I've got your back. That's one of the best moments in the show to that point, because, like, that kind of moment has been so... Like, I've been waiting for that moment for, like, the entirety of the series. Yeah, Hiei does respect Yusuke and Kuwabara to a much lesser extent. But I feel like I feel like Hiei doesn't get interesting, like genuinely interesting, until the Three Kings arc. And I feel like the trade-off for that is that Kuwabara disappears from the story. But in the Three Kings arc, Hiei is legitimately one of the most interesting characters. Because in Three Kings, he has everything going on with Makoro. And I know people are going to be upset about Hiei being in B tier. But he's mostly uninteresting until the Three Kings arc, when he becomes one of the most interesting characters, with everything going on with him and his sister and his homeland. And you get to see his whole history, like how he was raised by bandits, how he got the Jagan Ai. All of that stuff is incredibly interesting. It's the character development I wish that they'd started earlier in the series. So I can acknowledge Hiei's cool. He's one of the coolest characters in the show, but he's not always interesting. So Hiei gets to sit in B tier. So first we have Hakusho. Hakusho is irrelevant, but neat. I don't really think Hakusho... You know, while I'm doing this, there's Seitei and Ho-Oh. They're just irrelevant. Hakusho has the most personality of the three of them, but him being an S-class demon and the extent of his powers is I'm a stretchy man is meh. Like, I don't really care about Hakusho, Seitei, or Ho-Oh. I do agree that we do get a touch of development from Hiei when they meet Yukina. But that's what I mean, though. Like, Hiei is interesting for small bursts. He gets interesting tidbits every now and then. but I feel like all of the interesting character development happens to everyone around Hiei. And yeah, he does have the Guts backstory, you're right. It's kind of funny in that way. Dr. Ichigaki. Yeah, that's a great moment when Hiei is acknowledging Yusuke. Ichigaki is a D tier character just because that whole story is kind of messed up, but in a really fun, I guess fun's the wrong word. It's just messed up in a very narratively driven way. So like, of course him, M1 and M3, oh, excuse me, sorry about that. Ichigaki is kind of goofy, kind of dumb. He looks like a gremlin all the time. But the way he finessed M1, M2, and M3 out of their free will is kind of savage. So he's not quite irrelevant, especially because of how his story services Kuwabara's story. So that's the thing you guys got to keep in mind is it's hard to rank these characters in isolation because all of these characters play off of each other in some way, form, or fashion. So if you see a character that's in like a weird tier, it's either like their character development or how they react to other characters or their designs or yada yada yada. Like Ichigaki isn't the most interesting or the most relevant character, but how he impacts Kuwabara's story is, it's great. Itsuki, I feel, is irrelevant but neat. Listen, I know I'm gonna catch flack about Hiei, but Hiei's not moving out of B tier. Itsuki is one of those characters that's cool in concept, but he doesn't really do anything. The most he does is open the portal for Sensui and talk really softly. And that's it. And lust over Sensui. He's got a big old like boner for Sensui. That's the extent of his character. Even though I think Hiei and Kurama, like, they recognize that he's one of the last of his type of demon, but it doesn't really play into his character. He sits in a boat for most of Chapter Black, and then he stands around and exposits information all over Team Urameshi for the other half of Chapter Black. So I like Itsuki in concept. Jin, I feel, is an A tier character. Yeah, just exposits information all over everyone all the time. Jin is an A tier character. He's pretty and that's all. Yeah, you're right. I think Jin is in the same category as Chu in the sense that despite them being like not the most relevant characters in terms of staying power, like versus the story, they're fun. They're such fun characters. Jin is hysterical. I love his accent. The Scottish accent could have gotten really old really quickly, but I loved it. It's probably one of my favorite things in this show. It's just how dumb and happy and carefree Jin is. He's just there to have a good time. He's just there to throw some punches, meet some people, maybe swipe a couple of people right on on Tinder. Jin's just there to just be himself, unapologetically himself. And I think that makes him fascinating. Him and Yusuke develop a legitimately fun friendship, just like him and Chu do. I honestly wish that Jin appeared more, but I understand why he didn't. Though I was happy to see him and Chu return in I was happy to see them return in the Three Kings arc. I know that part of the arc is known as the Demon World Tournament arc, but I just cram all of that together and call it the Three Kings. Yeah, we do love Jin. We do love us some Jin. The accent broke you in the best way. That's a great way to put that. Fun fact about this is the Japanese voice actor for Jin uses a different dialect of Japanese that's harder to understand. So it kind of mirrors that dub accent where it's slightly harder to understand and they have different idioms. You're just like, what the hell is he saying? But he sounds like he's having a good time. George / the narrator. I'm gonna put George in irrelevant but neat because that sums up his whole character. And I love the narrator's voice. Like, the narrator adds a lot of gravity to a lot of situations at the end of episodes. Also, for a moment while we're talking about the narrator, can we talk about how incredible Yu Yu Hakusho's soundtrack is? Like, the OST is full of bangers. Yeah, man, Jin's out there unifying the chat. Jeez. You know, that's a good question. There aren't a lot of anime out there that incorporate Scottish accents. I mean, I don't know any other ones than Yu Yu Hakusho, but I also don't watch anything dub anymore. I tried watching, I tried watching Demon Slayer, Jujutsu Kaisen, and My Hero Academia dubbed, and almost died. I almost died. So George, I love George. George has a great sense of humor, but he's not exactly relevant. He's just a fun character. So he gets to be the irrelevant but neat. Because, like I said, he also doubles as the narrator for the show, and he does a good job. So, also, one of my favorite moments from George is, I wish I could remember exactly what was going on, but there's like this moment where it freeze frames on him and Koenma, and they're drawn super seriously, kind of like JoJo style. That's a fun moment. Cracks me up every single time. All right, next up we have Kaito. Kaito is, we're gonna put him in like lower D tier. Kaito, I wanted to like Kaito. I feel like he's a natural foil for Kurama. And like, as far as like a human can be against someone like Kurama. And I really enjoy the concept of his territory. But his territory is only utilized one time in the entirety of Chapter Black, which is a horrible, horrible missed opportunity. Like, imagine how they could have changed the game with Kaito's territories, especially against some of the people on Sensui's team who aren't as smart as Sensui. That would have been an incredible battle of wits and diction and wills. But he's there to be smug and be like, I'm smart. Anime glasses push activate. I'll get you, Kurama. I mean, Suichi. And that's it. That's the extent of his character, is that he has a hate boner for Kurama because Kurama does better on tests than him. He's like an alpha nerd. That's all it is. And I hate that. Yeah, like, you're not wrong, Roscoe. Like, I do, to an extent, like every single character. Because that's what makes ranking them is so hard. Because you want to look at them in a vacuum, but you can't do that and do them justice. Because, yeah, otherwise they would just all be A and S tier. Dr. Kamiya, I feel, is a... I feel like Dr. Kamiya is a C tier character as well. Kamiya is probably the most lethal of Sensui 7. I feel like he's more dangerous than Sniper too, because he just doesn't give a crap. Like, he's out there and ready to just murder folk. Like, when Chickadee is like, oh, maybe move Game Master to B, and he... No, he is not leaving B. He is not leaving B. And I don't think that Amanuma ascends to B tier. Because I don't think... As much as I don't think Hiei is above B tier, I don't think Amanuma is as interesting overall as Hiei becomes. Because, like I said, in the Three Kings arc, Hiei is fascinating. We get to see so much more about Hiei. And Amanuma has like that one moment, but he doesn't have like the staying power of Hiei. Dr. Kamiya is just a force of pure chaos. He was... Demented is a good word. That's a great word. He was, unironically, among Sensui 7, probably the most savage. Because, like, when that one chick is like, I thought you were supposed to to be off today, or you were supposed to come in from the night shift. He doesn't hesitate to cripple Kido. And then when she screams, he cuts her down. And it's like, bro, oh my god. And then when Kido uses his shadow to spell out Kamiya's name, as soon as Yusuke realizes who it is, and everyone's like, oh, it says Kamiya, he cuts down every doctor around him. That is some savage shit. And he just doesn't care. He agrees with everything Sensui says. You know, he agrees that humans need to be stamped out because they're, you know, an infection and like they're kind of like a pestilence on the planet. It's not until the end of Chapter Black when he's like, oh, maybe I was wrong. Since we kind of warped our brains, maybe I should stop killing people. But yeah, he just has no regard for human life. Even though, I guess later on, the narrator, so by proxy George, tells us that he goes on to save hundreds of lives. I guess to like atone for what he's done. So yeah, there's Doctor. Karasu, I feel, is... Karasu is kind of tricky for me, because I want to put him in like the upper C tier, but I also want to put him in like the lower B tier. I'm going to put him in the upper C tier. So Karasu is more interesting than Bui in every way conceivable because Karasu has a very distinct personality. And he lived rent-free in Kurama's brain for most of the Dark Tournament. He was even like flexing on Kurama, like, oh, your hair, you got split ends, boy. You should go to a salon, you loser. The one thing that loses me about Karasu is when his hair turns blonde. I think that kind of ruins his character design in a way. Karasu, I love his design. He has like a Morticia Addams look going on, if that makes any sense. The invisible bombs are kind of savage, or the fact that he can plant bombs in people. He ruins Kurama's whole day, just bloodies the hell out of our boy. And then dies and still wins the match. Kind of savage, if you ask me. But the fact that he had Kurama, one of the most cool-headed characters in the entire series, panicking all the time, is what makes him a C-tier character. Because Kurama's like, what are we going to do about this guy? I like, unless I tap into Yoko, this guy is going to kill me. And he's going to get aroused to doing it. Because there was some very weird sexual tension between him and Kurama. Like, I don't ship it, but it's fun to see those two being like, oh, who's going to touch who first? You're right. The Doctor does represent the deranged but highly skilled wildcard type of follower that is capable of both great good and great... Yeah, that's a very good way to put that. Because once the spell was broken on Doctor after Sensui was defeated, he immediately was like, oh, I've been doing wrong. I should go on to save lives, and becomes like he opens like a practice where he just goes around healing people or whatever. Like, it's kind of wild. Keiko is irrelevant but neat. She's basically the Kagome of Yu Yu Hakusho. That's really all I can say. I like her as a character, like as a partner to Yusuke, but she's not exactly interesting. She's just kind of there. She's more interesting than Kagome. She's more interesting than someone like Kairi from Kingdom Hearts, who is just like a head painted on a wooden plank. But yeah, Keiko is nice. She's a serviceable character. Yeah, Karasu tried to go Super Saiyan, but something went terribly wrong. Kido. You know, I'm going to put all of Genkai's sidekicks in D tier. Where is Yana? Where's Yana in his stupid hair? There it is. Kido, Kaito, and Yana are all D tier for me. Actually, you know, we're going to move... we're going to move Kaito down to just plain irrelevant. We're going to move Yana to irrelevant but neat. You know, we're going to put these two there as well. I have changed my mind. The sidekicks are less than D tier. Kaito, I feel like it's self-explanatory for why he is... Hold on, what? We're gonna switch to this. There we go. Need some other jams going. Kaito, he gets to just be irrelevant. Because at least Kido and Yana serviced the story. Like, they helped out. Because Kido, of course, taught Yusuke a valuable lesson about not going into battles without understanding your foe's powers. And then he had like the cool variants where he's just like, yeah, he is in B tier. It's a whole thing. I'll relitigate that later. He got the variants of his shadow power where he could like write Kamiya's name on the floor, which was cool. Yana got to trick Doctor by turning into a nurse and like throwing stuff in his face and yada yada yada. They got to use their powers more than once. Not Kaito though, so they get to be irrelevant but neat. And I mean, they kind of help during the Goblin City thing. Well, I mean, Kaito helps. I don't remember if, well, Kito's in the hospital, so he's kind of out of commission after the hospital. Yana's just kind of there. Everyone's gonna be so upset about he being in B tier, but he's just not interesting. I'm sorry, he's not interesting until way later. The most interesting thing about him before the Three Kings arc is the fact that he's like, I have a sister, but I can't tell my sister who I am, which ties into the Three Kings thing, which retroactively makes that more interesting. That's why I'm saying, like, he's interesting, but later on. And that's not enough to make him anything but B tier. I'm sorry. Hiei gets to be BA. Kirin. Kirin's irrelevant but neat. I think he serves as a cool partner to Makuro. I like his design. I like that he kind of has like a Knights Templar thing going on. And in the English dub, I like the voice actor who plays him. I don't remember who does, but like the voice is nice. Koenma is a C tier character, elevated entirely by his character arc in Chapter Black. Because before that, he was just there for, you know, to be the butt of people's jokes. He was there as like a punching bag verbally, and an exposition dump. That's literally all he was for the longest time. But with Chapter Black and his relationship to Sensui and how that pains him, and then we learned why he has the like what the use of the pacifier was, all of that stuff kind of elevated him to a C tier character, because after that he goes back to being mostly irrelevant, kind of because he's on the run, or I guess on the run is too strong of a phrase. He refuses to go back to Spirit World because King Daddy, as he refers to him, is, you know, still upset. I feel like we're gonna have to add another layer to irrelevant but neat. So let's do that. Add a row below. Because that's where a lot of characters are gonna end up. So next up we have Coco, Enki's wife. She's pretty irrelevant. One thing I will say about the characters from the Three Kings arc, the auxiliary characters, is I wish they were introduced a bit earlier. Because most of them are introduced after Ryzen dies. And even after that, they mostly disappear from the story until it's time for the tournament. But I feel like if Yusuke had met them instead of Hakusho and Seitei and Toho, like if Hakusho had come through and introduced Yusuke to Ryzen, but Enki and Coco and people like Natsume and what the hell was that guy's name? Natsume, Soketsu, and Kujo. If they had been introduced earlier, that would have been kind of cool, because they have fun personalities, especially Coco. I feel like Coco and Enki bounce off of each other really well, because you don't expect them to be husband and wife, especially how different their personalities are. But imagine that dynamic if they had been introduced earlier in that arc, and they could have been actual fleshed out characters who interacted with Yusuke and Ryzen before he died. And we could have seen that. Like, if we could have seen their friendship before Ryzen died, it would have been better. But as it stands, they're mostly irrelevant. So I'll go ahead and put Kujo. Is it Kujo or Kojo? I don't remember. Natsume. Don't even remember this guy's name. Suketsu. There are a couple of images on here. I'm like, who even is that? Is this Demon Tournament Yusuke? I don't remember who that is. That's just a random character. Also, Pooh is in here for some reason. I'm like, why? So I might be... You know, I'm going to go through our main boys right now. Yusuke, of course, is an S tier character. Kuwabara is an A tier character. Kurama is an S tier character. Is that the rest of our main boys? Yes. Okay, so let me justify. So, of course, Yusuke is an S tier character because he gets basically all of the development from the start to finish. And it gives him a great character arc from who he is in the very first episode to who he is in the very last episode. I mean, I have so much to say about Yusuke over the course of my Dark Tournament video and my Chapter Black video, so I'm not really going to relitigate that here. So I feel like Kurama, despite him and Hiei being in the same, in the same troop all the time, like them having been partners for so long, what sets them apart isn't just my personal bias. It's the fact that even when Kurama's introduced at the very beginning, he has a lot going on for him as a character. Like, when he first meets Yusuke, Yusuke confronts him for stealing the mirror. Yeah, I'll get to Kuwabara in a second. Just give me a moment. Kurama steals the mirror alongside, of course, Hiei getting the sword and Goki getting that green ball thing. But he wants the mirror so that he can cure his dying mom of a unnamed ailment, and he's wholly willing to give up his life at that point. That's not exactly bad writing. Like, he knows that he won't walk away from that alive and is still willing to do it because he cares about his human mother, which is what gets Yusuke to step in and be like, no, like, I'm going to assist you so that you can live happy with your mom. Like, how would your mom feel if she lives but then finds out that her son's dead? Like, that was a tiny arc, but it was really good. And then we move on to Saint Beasts, which I guess Kurama is mostly just kind of there for the Saint Beasts, but I don't really care about that arc at all. Then you have the Dark Tournament, where Kurama realizes that he's not strong enough to survive on his own merits, and that's when we start getting peeks into Yoko and how him and Yoko are distinctly different people, personality-wise. And then we have to watch him struggle with the idea of, am I enough without that part of me? It's not to mention, like, we get to watch Kurama experience legitimate fear and anxiety over the fact that he might just die the next day. We get to see him, talking to people like Toya, who's like, if you get this island, what will you do with it? Because, I know what it's like to live in the shadows and all that stuff, which gives us more hints into who he used to be. We get so many tidbits about Kurama, his overall character over the course of his stay in the show. And then when he joins Team Urameshi, of course, before that, instead of being punished by Koenma, he is allowed to act on behalf of Spirit World because, as the report, let Koenma know, he didn't steal the mirror for like nefarious purposes. He was just trying to help someone. And then, of course, we get into Chapter Black, where he has to deal with the idea of, Chapter Black, Kurama's biggest thing comes in the same scenes as a Game Master. That's where Kurama hits his peak in Chapter Black, where it's like he knows what he has to do, but he knows that doing what he has to do is going to kill this child. And then he tries to fake like he's okay with that, And then, of course, here comes Gourmet. Well, I guess Toguro disguised as Gourmet. And he's like, oh, you're actually really torn up about killing that kid because you know that Yoko would never be so weak as to be torn up over it. So he's still kind of torn up between, you know, this is how I'm feeling, but I'm ashamed because Yoko wouldn't feel this way. So that's all fun. And then, of course, just like Hiei, he gets elevated even further by how interesting things get with Chapter Black. Not Chapter Black, I just said that. With the Three Kings, in the sense that his relationship with Yomi and that tension there, and the fact that Kurama might not exactly be the smartest person in the room anymore, and he's also not the strongest in that room, it makes the tension and the stress so much higher because Yomi knows what Kurama did to him, and then he confronts Kurama with that person he sent after him, and it's like, oh geez, he can hear Kurama's heartbeat, he can tell when Kurama is stressed or when Kurama's calm. Kurama has to play things so much closer to the chest just to avoid setting Yomi off, and it's incredible. I love that entire dynamic. So yeah, all of that combined it's pretty top tier, and when you measure that against why Hiei's B tier, because Hiei doesn't get interesting until the very end of the show, that's why they're so far apart for me, because Hiei is cool but doesn't get a lot of moments to shine outside of combat. Kurama's cool but gets a lot of arcs and a lot of development to go with that, and he has a lot of cool combat mechanics. So yeah, Kuwabara is A tier because, one, he's around for basically the entire story, and he has a lot of development that goes through not only him personally with how he deals with the Dark Tournament in Chapter Black, but how he relates to Yusuke, and watching their friendship start off as like, oh, you're just the guy that beats me up every day, to them legitimately depending on each other and looking at each other kind of like brothers. And then it all culminating in, you know, first Kuwabara quote unquote laying down his life to elevate Yusuke to higher echelons of power, and then Yusuke turning around and laying down his life to return the favor to power up Kuwabara. So because he knows that Kuwabara has more in him, and he knows that Kuwabara can't tap it. But then watching Kuwabara break down because he isn't willing to watch Yusuke give up his life just so that he can get stronger. It's all a beautiful, beautiful story for Kuwabara that sadly kind of just stops at the end of Chapter Black because he gets completely tossed to the wayside for the Three Kings arc, because that's all about Demon World. And that makes me sad. I would have liked to have seen Kuwabara come back in some way to be part of the Three Kings arc. Like I mentioned in Chapter Black, I would have liked to have seen Kuwabara return as the new spirit detective of Earth, because he doesn't have the atavism of the Mazaku. There's nothing in his family history to worry about. He's just a human doing his best, and I think that's what really sets Kuwabara aside from a lot of other characters. Is he's just a guy that's just doing his best, and he has like a heart of gold. He's the most empathetic character in the entire series. Next up we have Makihara, aka Gourmet, who is he's D tier because he's not quite irrelevant. Like, him as a character is irrelevant, but his power, his territory services the story. So I guess that kind of flies in the face of irrelevancy. I don't really have anything to say about Makihara. Like, everything about him is just, it's all about his power and how that power is needed to consume Kuwabara and then like the Toguro brother. So at a certain point, he's not even Gourmet anymore. He's Elder Toguro. But, you know, I feel like that is enough to convince me to put him in irrelevant beneath. Oh, does this? Oh, I didn't even realize that this branch is like this. So let's do away with these extra ones, because we don't need them apparently. I've never done a tier list. I watched old and new Hunter x Hunter. I watched old Hunter x Hunter because that was where I like to start with the original versions of things. And when that left off, then I picked up with Hunter x Hunter 2011. I like Hunter x Hunter 99 more because it had that gritty 90s feel to it. It was way more violent, and the art style didn't feel as, for lack of a better phrase, sterile. Everything about Hunter x Hunter 2011 is very clean, and that's why I don't really want a Yu Yu Hakusho revival series, because it's too, new animation is too clean for 90s reboots, I should say. Like, for example, look at Red Eye's Kurapika in the 99 version versus Red Eye's Kurapika in the 2011 version. They look, one looks legitimately terrifying, and one's like, oh, he's got some contact lenses in. Specifically the scene where he's walking down the street with the eyes of his people after the York Shin arc ends, and he's just bathed in blood. The difference between those two scenes is night and day. Makintaro. Makintaro is mostly irrelevant. Makintaro is just there so that Hiei can flex, albeit in a really cool way. Takes dude's arm and then stabs him through the top of the head, and we get to watch all that carnage. Yes, delicioso. But otherwise, Makintaro is like, it's like, why are you here? Did you really think you would survive the Dark Tournament, let alone win? Get out of here. Seaman. Seaman is a C tier character for me. No pun intended there. I really like the perspective that Seaman brings to Chapter Black, in the sense that he actually had like a legitimate rough life before Sensui got his hands on him. Like, he was being bullied. He was a foreigner. He's a blonde, which is mostly unusual for Japan, so people were picking on him. Like a natural blonde, not like dyed blonde, because there's a lot of people with dyed blonde hair and bleached blonde hair in Japan. But he was coming at the whole situation from someone that was ostracized and persecuted, so he had more resentment in him going into the arc. So he was more open to Sensui's manipulations, of course, with everything Sensui / Minoru was telling him, versus having watched the tape itself. So it was cool to see him reconcile with that when Kuwabara defeated him, but didn't flee to save his own life. Like, he didn't leave his friends behind to let them die. He was like, you know when what was the quote? It was something along the lines of, when men do what they're supposed to, it's not always about what they want. So he tried to talk sense into Seaman by saying, like, hey, you're just like the people that you hate. Like, you turned into them. Like, maybe you don't do that. And then after he beat him, he still took the time to rescue him. And that kind of threw everything that Seaman believed about the world and the people, as Sensui taught him, into question. And then he goes on to try to help Team Urameshi by leading them through Demon's Door Cave to where they need to go. But he does become mostly irrelevant after that. For the part of the story that he needs to be relevant for, he does his job exceedingly well. And then after that, he becomes a background character for the rest of the Chapter Black. Except when he stands up to the Spirit Defense Force. It's like, hey, leave Yusuke alone. He put his life on the line for you guys. And then promptly gets, shut up. But I like Seaman. I like his design. I like his power. That's something I haven't talked about enough, is like character design. As simple as Seaman's character design is, I do like the touch of giving him a rain jacket. I thought that was actually kind of a cool touch. Kuro Momotaro, I think, is a C tier. That's D tier. I think he's C tier in the sense that his fight is really cool. He doesn't add anything to the narrative, but his fight with Hiei is a lot of fun. His little smoke balls that turn him into different types of the beast orbs or whatever they're called, those are fun. Those were a lot of fun. And then watching Hiei take a step back is the first time we ever see that happen in the anime, because he's like, oh shit, what am I supposed to do here? Because Kuro Momotaro had that ability where once his body recognizes the pain of a certain attack, he becomes immune to it. And I thought that was a dope thing for Hiei to have to contend with, because Hiei is very much a run and gun person. He's very much like, I'm gonna go in, I'm gonna kill them, and I'm gonna get out of the ring. But Kuro kind of made him rethink his approach. And then having the different forms with different specialties, I thought that was kind of fun too. It was like watching a boss fight with different phases. And then having Hiei have to innovate after he broke his sword by using the Sword of the Mortal Flame, which we never see again. I was like, hey, Hiei's got a lightsaber for the moment. It was cool. It was a lot of fun. So just because of how fun this fight is, he lands squarely in C tier. Mukuro. I think Mukuro's A tier. I don't think Mukuro quite reaches S tier. I think she's very well designed. I like her attitude and the way she carries herself. The voice actress does a great job of delivering the lines in kind of like a matter-of-fact but powerful way. She's mostly interesting based on Hiei. You know, actually, I'm going to drop her down to B tier. I don't think, now that I'm looking at it, she's only interesting because of Hiei. Because, I mean, overall, I like her history. I like that she's kind of a jaded character that carries her trauma around with her. And the fact that Hiei is the one that frees her from her trauma. And then they kind of end up a pair. They end up a thing. And I think that was kind of wholesome at the end. But also she has like that weird dimensional tear attack, which is like, how does that work? Like the way she, do you guys remember the effect for that? Where she would like slash the air and create those lines, and then like the whole world would like slip a bit. I was like, how did she just ruin reality like that? I mean, yeah, she's one of the three kings, of course. She's incredibly vicious. She travels on that roaming bug thing. Her whole palace is like a giant bug. But she's known as like the most vicious of the kings. And we see that when she puts Hiei through that gauntlet of fighters because she sees promise in Hiei. But she keeps chains on her arms, like shackles, because she was a slave. And that's where she draws her power from, is like the anger and trauma of her past. And eventually Hiei is the one that frees her from that. Because at the end of his character arc, he realizes that he doesn't need to be shackled to his past and the pain that comes with it. I'll talk more about them in the Three Kings video, but she's interesting because Hiei is interesting at this point. And by this point, Hiei is like her right-hand man. Murota. Irrelevant, but neat. I like his territory. It's just simple mind reading. He's just a guy trying to be a rising boxer. Nothing fancy. Nothing terribly out of context. He's just like, nah, dude, I just want to punch people. I just want to be the guy that punches people and knows how to punch people better. Hiei was spelled E. Hey, man, we've all been there. We've all been in places where we learned stuff way too late. So, Onji and the beautiful Suzuka are separate characters on here, which is fine by me. I think Onji is actually kind of a fun character. I'm gonna put him in the D tier just because he doesn't have a lot of screen time. But I like how playful he is as like an old man. He's like, oh, could you speak up? I didn't quite hear you. Like, oh, these shoulders ain't what they used to be. He's just fun. I don't really have much to say about him after that. Suzuka is a C tier character. He's definitely more interesting than Koro Momotaro. I love how flamboyant he is compared to literally the entire aesthetic of the Dark Tournament. He's all colors and laughter and giggling and clown man, and the rest of the arc is very much dark and dreary and depressing. And the fact that he like has to be legally called Beautiful Suzuka by Demon World law is like, that's funny. That's some funny stuff. Or like how he throws that card when Kodo calls him Suzuka. and like barely misses her and kills the guy behind her, that's funny. He's comedy gold. He does calm down later, which I appreciate, because if the clown thing had gone on too long, I probably would have hated it. But, you know, he gets better. He comes back for the Three Kings arc, the Demon World Tournament, but he gets stomped out pretty easily. Like, I believe he loses off screen. Like, we don't even get to see how that pans out. I mean, the Demon World Tournament feels really rushed, but whatever. Pooh, I'm not even gonna bother. So I'm probably gonna get some heat for this, but I think Ryzen is a D tier character. I don't think Ryzen is interesting at all. Ryzen is interesting in the sense that he takes over Yusuke's body and beats the living piss out of Sensui. And then he shows up, well, Yusuke shows up, and he's like, oh, if you move me from my throne, I'll acknowledge you. And then Yusuke blows up the throne. He's like, oh, I mean, that's a technicality, but I'll give it to you. And then he promptly dies. We don't really get to see Yusuke and Ryzen interact all too much. It's just a lot of implied relationships. We get his backstory with like why he stopped eating humans and like the woman that he fell in love with and stuff. But that's all very, very little compared to the other kings. It's actually kind of criminal how little screen time Ryzen actually gets for such an important character. And he kind of gets robbed in terms of any critical development he could have had or any interesting legacy he could have left behind as a character. So I don't understand why people like him so much. His design's not even all that interesting either. He's just a guy with long hair. That's it. That's as far as that goes. Rando. I feel like Rando is a C tier antagonist just because of how vicious he can be. Like, he was wholly willing to completely brutalize Kuwabara. Almost killed Yusuke. He was willing to disguise himself as that one like monk kid. He was smart about it. Like, he infiltrated Genkai's tournament under the guise of like some not so powerful monk kid. And then when he had that fight in that tournament, when they were fighting in the dark, and he beat the dude, but then he like comes out like pretending to be hurt worse than he was. That was fun. Like he did what he needed to get Yusuke prepared for stronger villains, and I appreciate that. His design is, he basically looks like if Kurama had like an edgelord phase, but worse. So he looks like he auditioned for a role in Inuyasha and it was given to someone else. So Rando gets to sit his little butt in C tier. Rinku. I think Rinku is properly C tier. He's fun. He's basically just like the annoying little kid without being overly annoying. I love the fact that he fights with yo-yos. That's such an interesting weapon choice that I was like, damn, they should have put this in Elden Ring. The yo-yos that he uses remind me of yo-yos in Terraria, and I love using yo-yos in Terraria. They're so OP. He has a good design. He's playful. I love the interactions he has with Kuwabara, especially after Kuwabara just refuses to stay down, and you can see that he's like just a normal little kid. He's just like, could you please stay down? And then he hops out of the ring and says, excuse me, so that he could run to the wall and heal himself after Kuwabara heckin' stabs him with his spirit sword. He's a good partner for Chu. Oh, excuse me. I got something caught in my throat there. He does show up again for the Demon World Tournament. but I don't remember anything he does at all. Risho, I feel like Risho's D tier. He's just there to be smug. His power is dirt. He looks like if Rock Lee grew up and then promptly went through an emo phase but never grew out of it. I don't really care about Risho. Risho is one of those characters that's there to service Kuwabara's story. And it didn't make sense to me that Risho was the leader of Team Masho, because I feel like Jin or Toya should have been the leader of Team Masho. I can never wrap my head around how this guy, Dirt Man, was the one pulling the strings of Team Masho. He doesn't even have the strongest ability. I feel like Jin and Toya could wipe the floor with Risho. Roto. I'm going to put Roto in just plain irrelevant, because he's literally only there to show us how smart Kurama can be when Kurama's forced to think on his feet. That's it. And boy, was that fun to watch. Ruka. If he had the Terrarian, you know what? I can't argue with that. If he had the Terrarian, or if he just kept farming Moonlords so he had 10 Terrarians, he would have won. Hands down. Ruka. So I actually didn't know that Ruka is actually a part of Team... is it Team Masho she's part of? She's actually a part of one of the teams. Like a legitimate member. I can't remember. I can't remember if it's Team Masho or someone else. Whichever team they were fighting at the time. I think it was Team Masho. But whatever. Ruka is just there to be fun. Yeah, we see seriously pissed off Kurama because of Roto. Ruka is... she's like a discount Kmart Nurse Jenny. Not Nurse Jenny, Nurse Joy. It's Officer Jenny. Jeez. She's like a worse Nurse Joy. She's not as adorable as Nurse Joy. And then she gets completely overpowered once Hiei starts getting his powers back. She's mostly there to just help the Black Club cheat Team Urameshi out of fairness. But she does her role well, so she can remain in irrelevant but neat. Okay, it was Team Masho, thank you. This guy, I don't remember his name, so I'm not even gonna... I know he's one of Ryzen's former friends, or I say former because Ryzen's dead, but I don't remember his name, so I'm not gonna bother rating him. Sakio, I feel that Sakio is a C tier character. I like how conniving Sakio is. I like his he has a very basic businessman design, but it works for him. It does exactly what it needs to in order to get the job done. He has a good rapport with Toguro, and I think that's one of the coolest things in the Dark Tournament is watching them kind of interact with each other without any kind of hostility or anything. They're just two guys that have like a mutual goal, and they both need each other to get to their goal. But the way Sakio cleans out Tarukane is hysterical. I always laugh whenever that happens. He's a rich boy. He's the Elon Musk of the Yu Yu Hakusho universe. I didn't care at all about his perceived relationship with Shizuru. I don't know why people dig that so much. I thought it was kind of forced and boring. It was boring from Sakio's side. Like, Shizuru added more to that, but like it still wasn't enough to be like, yeah, I can see why. They're just ranked in terms of like how much I enjoy them overall. Like their designs, their relevancy to the story, like how interesting they are, stuff like that. It's not, this is just for fun. Like, this is just me, you know, taking the piss. I don't expect anyone to fully agree with this list. Like, I'm already catching heat for Hiei being in B tier. Kuroko. Irrelevant but neat. I would have liked to see more of Kuroko. I feel like because Kuroko was the spirit detective before Sensui, and she recognized that Sensui's rigid sense of right and wrong would become a problem one day, I feel like it would have been more pragmatic to introduce her during Chapter Black. She would have been way, way more widely appreciated if we had known she existed then. But she's only relevant for like one episode when Yusuke goes to talk to her before going off to Demon World. And other than that, she has 2 kids that have spirit powers, and they're basically her watchdogs. They kill demons and stuff. Yeah, basically, like, this is just for fun. Like, I'm not gonna like argue about, oh, you're wrong if you don't think this character is this tier, because like I understand like art and opinions are subjective. So like I might feel one way about a character and you might feel a different way, and like that's perfectly fine. This is just to have fun, maybe facilitate a few discussions. But yeah, Kuroko, she came way too late to be of any real relevance to the story. Seiryu. I think Seiryu is also D tier because he is a... Where's my mouse? There it is. Move this back up. Seiryu is a worse version of Toya. And Hiei defeats him with relative ease relatively quickly, despite him being the so-called master of ice. He's got a good design though, and that's what irks me. I love his design, but he gets washed. He gets washed so easily. Water Legend, I agree. I do kind of wish Keiko had more of a role, but I'm glad they didn't do the... I'm glad they didn't go the Kingdom Hearts route, like Kairi, where it's like she's irrelevant until she suddenly has powers. Because that would have been really annoying. Because Kingdom Hearts has a bad habit of, like with Kairi, it was like, oh, she's irrelevant, but let's give her a Keyblade, and then suddenly everybody had Keyblades. Like, but that's a whole different thing. Like, I do wish Keiko had more to do though. Sensui. I feel Sensui is an S tier antagonist, and I have an entire Chapter Black video on why. My only hangups about Sensui is that the plot point of him being someone with dissociative identity disorder, it comes way too late. Like, we're supposed to be invested in these other personalities, but we only ever see 2 of them aside from the core personality, Shinobu. Because it's heavily implied by Kazuya that the person that we see throughout most of the arc is Minoru. So, yeah, like, Sensui is one of those characters where everything he does is very well written. Aside from the personalities thing, like it was a cool quirk, but it mostly amounted to nothing because we only met Kazuya, who brutalized Yusuke for a little bit, and then we had Minoru, who did all the talking throughout most of the arc, and then the arc ends with just Shinobu. We don't get to see the female personality that Itsuki referenced. We don't get to see any of the other personalities that he invented. Well, not invented, but that he adopted in order to carry out his plan. We only get to meet 3, and I feel like that's kind of a wasted opportunity. But everything that he does, like the way he plans everything out, is so meticulous. It's so meticulous. To the point where, like I said in my video, it kind of makes you think, oh man, Did he want them to do X, Y, and Z? And the answer is usually yes. He had a contingency for just about everything, and he did not give a single shit if his subordinates lived or died, and I thought that was savage. Yeah, there were only 3 personalities that made an appearance: Shinobu, Minoru, and Kazuya. I do feel like the sacred energy thing was kind of like an ass pull. Like, he didn't need sacred energy, because sacred energy doesn't really matter at all ever again until like the end of the Demon World tournament when Yusuke has it. But even then, Yusuke kind of like forsakes it. Like, he decides to just go back to using spirit energy and stuff. I think what keeps him above A tier for me is that it's how he interacts with the rest of the cast and the story, and how he basically completely flips the status quo on his head, because Yusuke comes away from the Dark Tournament kind of bummed that he beat Toguro, because as far as Yusuke knows, Toguro was the strongest there was. And then so to find out that there's someone potentially stronger, like on par with the full power Toguro or stronger, and then when he fights Sensui and gets manhandled, like everything that Yusuke achieved up to that point, it feels, it doesn't feel irrelevant, but it feels like Yusuke still has more growth to do. And I really appreciated that. And then, of course, all of Sensui's plans and how that brought things out in Kurama and Kuwabara, and especially Koenma. Sensui had an impact on every single character around him, versus where Toguro mostly was focused on Yusuke and Genkai. And by proxy, he did stuff, you know, to the characters around them. But Sensui touched on every single character. So let's move on to Sachi or Shachi or whatever his name is. He's just plain irrelevant. I don't care at all about this character. He was Yomi's right-hand man before Kurama, and then he got mad at Kurama because Kurama is working his way to the top, and he's like, oh, you're gonna steal my blind boyfriend. So we're just gonna move on. I don't really care at all about Sachi. Shigure. I think Shigure is a C tier character. I really appreciate the world building that comes from this character, especially in his backstory and how that relates to Hiei, because he's the Demon World surgeon who can, for a price, give people powers, and of course he's the one that implanted Hiei's Chigan Eye. And so the operation is why Hiei fell from, I think he was an A-class demon at first, and then when he got the Chigan Eye, the operation zapped most of his energy and dropped into a D-tier demon, which is where we first meet him at the beginning of the series. But that's cool information to have. And then the price that he had to pay was, I believe he could like not tell his sister who he was or something like that. I believe that was the price he had to pay. So like, whenever he does surgery on someone, he commands a steep but metaphorical price. And I think that's really interesting writing. He's got a weird design. Like, I don't understand the hoops in his face, and like the one that goes through his skull. What's that about? But his ring weapon's kind of dope. He kind of reminds me of that. I don't remember her name, but it was a character in Soul Calibur that had like a ring weapon. But Shigure's cool. He's cool. I like his bells. I like how he battles with Hiei. And then his fight with Kurama is pretty cool. Yeah, he just adds a lot of lore to the world, which is much needed. Shishi Wakamaru. Shishi, I feel, is another C tier character. I love the fact that Shishi is only doing this because he wants to be famous. That's literally his whole goal. He's like, yeah, I just want all the fame. And he somehow thought that was going to be enough to get him through the tournament. It's also like the first time we see like a bunch of females in the audience that are like cheering for a character, and that's funny. But what makes it even more hysterical to me is when he does the Chorus of 1,000 Skulls from the Banshee Shriek, and just stops caring about the audience, and they're like, people are just dying left and right. He's like, oh, this is fine. He's like that dog sitting in the middle of the fire, but instead of fire, it's a bunch of spirit-eating ghosts. He's like, this is fine. He looks better when in his normal form versus his horned form. I don't really care about that. Or his bird form, which is kind of dumb. He's not the best character. He's just kind of there to be fun and silly and vapid and superficial. He's a fun archetype. And then he gets manhandled by Genkai, and he's like, oh, if you weren't so old and ugly, maybe you could have been my baby. And she's like, oh wow, get lost, loser. He's like, alright, cool, bleh. Brings us to Shizuru, who is irrelevant but neat. I like Shizuru more than I like Keiko. I almost called her Kagome. I think Shizuru has some of the funniest lines in the show. I love her attitude. One of my favorite moments from Shizuru is when Yukina is trying to see the screen during Kuwabara's fight against Risho, and Shizuru just starts beating people up to get them to move out of the way since Yukina can't see, and she's like, step aside or experience serious pain, and everyone just moves. That's funny. You can't tell me that's not funny. She's a woman that knows what she wants. She's got attitude. She's got like that smoker's voice, which I kind of like. I don't understand her infatuation with Sakio. He saves her one time, and then she suddenly like Niagara Falls over this guy. It'd be different if she had met Sakio earlier in the series. Like if they just kept crossing paths for some reason, I could have bought into that. But aside from that, there's no reason for me to care about the Sakio relationship. I do like that she legitimately cares about Kuwabara, even though she picks on him all the time. So, yeah, she's just a good older sister. She's to Kuwabara what Botan is to Yusuke. Shura. Shura is just plain irrelevant to me. I don't care about Shura at all. Okay, that's our last row. Shura is such an annoying character. I don't even understand what Togashi was thinking with this one. He's just like a worse version of Yomi. Like a vastly worse version of Yomi. So who cares about Shura? And then he goes through like that phase where he's like, Dad, I'm gonna beat you. Fight me with everything you got, Dad. Man, he goes through like, it's like, dude, you were born like 3 days ago. Calm down. Why are you already going through your rebellious phase? Suzaku, I feel, is kind of like an upper B-tier antagonist. I like Suzaku's design a lot. I like that he's got... So I'm a sucker for lightning powers. Like lightning, wind, and ice are always like fun for me. And he was beating the hell out of Yusuke. Like Yusuke was... He was on the verge of getting Kentucky Fried deaded. But of course Keiko was in trouble, and Yusuke is like, oh, I'll just use some of my life energy to beat you. Fun fact, for the longest time I thought that the two antennae in front of Suzaku, I thought that was his hair. Like I thought he had two like dyed red bangs. It wasn't until I actually like got further into the series that I was like, oh, those are like antennae. Like they're okay. I feel like an idiot. But I did think that he was a fairly threatening antagonist. The fact that Yusuke had to like damn near put his life on the line to beat him, like even that early in his journey as a spirit detective, was fun. The fact that Suzaku was just straight up torturing him though, with that, when he had like his when he did like the duplication thing, was holding Yusuke's arms and pinning him down and just shocking him over and over. That was some savage shit. Gonzo Terukine, he's just relevant. He's just a living testicle who's there to torture and otherwise. innocent girl. Elder Toguro. I hate him, but he's a C tier villain. He is grotesque. I hate his voice in the best way. I love his abilities though, like how he can turn his body into whatever he wants it to, and he can move his vital organs around. He's just there to be disgusting and torture people. Or like I feel like his best scene is when he's up against Team Garangia, but they're like, he's like, oh, I'll just take all of you guys on at once, and then he uses his body to like spike them all. That was kind of hardcore. And then he has the 3 surviving members of Team Garangia kind of on their knees, and he's like, oh, if you beg for your life, you know, I'll let whoever lives, whoever begs for their life, like whoever does it first, whatever. And then that one guy's like, oh, let me live, I'll whatever. And then he immediately kills that guy. And the other guy's like, oh, you know, if you let me live, I'll just get stronger and kill you, which is like exactly Bui and Karasu's thing. And El Toguro is like, my brother would like that, but my brother's not here, so he kills him too. That kind of stuff is savage to me. But I mean, I otherwise hate this man, but for all the proper reasons. Elder Toguro. He's also an S tier villain for me, because he's not as dynamic as Sensui, but they're just like an onion. He's got layers. You've got his relationship with Genkai and how he only became a demon because he was struggling with the idea of his mortality, and how he's putting in so much work to be strong, but human bodies are frail, and the older you get, the weaker you get. And how on the surface, he still loves Genkai, and he kind of despises the fact that she didn't choose the same thing as him, because he wanted to live his life with her. So yeah, I think that dynamic was fun. But then how he sees that there's potential in Yusuke, and he isn't just trying to straight up murder Yusuke. He's trying to bring out more in Yusuke, because he's trying to, in a way, Yusuke represents everything that Genkai stood for. So before he can really, how do I phrase it? He's trying to put his ideology to the test against Genkai's ideology, because Yusuke is very much a believer that like part of life is appreciating what you have, and, you know, growing old with people and all of the mundanity that comes with life. Like, is it okay to live a life of mediocrity with the ones you love, or is it okay to throw everything away in pursuit of a single-minded goal? And that's what that clash came down to. And Yusuke embodied everything that Genkai stood for. So he wanted to get Yusuke at his strongest so that he could crush Yusuke to prove that his ideology was better than Genkai's. And then he was grateful and remorseful when Yusuke bested him, because he realized that he kind of threw away what could have been a beautiful life with Genkai. It's kind of a beautiful and heartbreaking character arc for Toguro, because he does come across as just a big buff Terminator guy, but simultaneously there's so much more to him. Pain, Hisoka, Akashi, aren't they better? Better in what way? I don't think Hisoka is better than Toguro. I think Hisoka is just a very horny villain. In terms of, I feel like Pain wow, me and Water Legend are on the same page there. Horny is what describes Hisoka. Pain is a fine villain. He does have a lot of layers to him. Who's Akashi? I'm also drawing a blank on that one. Okay, while I'm waiting for that, Toya, I feel is, for me personally, Toya is a B tier character. And I know that's, you know what, that's not fair. He's got to be a C tier character because he's not as interesting as Seaman or Doctor or Game Master. But I do like Toya a lot. So I would say he's upper C tier. I'll put him behind Seaman. I'm just a sucker for ice powers, and Toya has like that kind of formality to him, which is an interesting foil for someone like Kurama. And the interaction that the two of them have back and forth, like that whole conversation, the whole conversation they have during their fight is kind of enlightening into the kind of person Toya is, as well as the kind of person that Kurama used to be. Because Toya has a very rigid perception because he's a very diligent, you know, ninja. He did his training to the fullest. He has a goal and he's in service of that goal, but he also has like a sense of honor. But his attack patterns are also super cool, like the shards of winter, the fact that he turned his arm into like a whole ice blade, or that he put up like an ice wall around the arena. That was fun. But he doesn't really ascend any higher than that. He does appear again later, but he doesn't retain the same screen presence as like Jin or Chu. Akashi from Kuroko no Basket. I haven't seen Kuroko, so I can't really comment on Akashi. So as many anime as I've seen, there's also plenty of what I guess people would consider standard anime that I just haven't seen. So you'll have to forgive me for that one. I'll put it on my watch list though. There's a lot of stuff that I keep meaning to watch, so I will definitely put that on there if you guys give that the thumbs up. Yuri Urishima is irrelevant but neat in the sense that he's only interesting as far as what he does for Kurama in our introduction to Yoko. Because in terms of character introductions, Yoko's is pretty badass. The fog, the black lightning, the silhouette of Yoko in the background, that's all pretty savage. And then how savage Yoko is over the course of the fight with like that plant that it's like, oh, if this thing bites you, you know, its saliva is acidic enough to melt your bones. Yeah, we have Urishima for. I cannot talk today. We have Yuri Urishima to thank for that moment. So, the last of the three kings, we've got Haikyuu is like top 3 anime for me, like not even lying. If it's not top 3, it's definitely top 5. But I honestly can say Haikyuu is probably top 3 for me. It's such a wholesome anime. Hell, I have Hinata tattooed on me too. Have a good one, Water Legend. I'm not sure if we'll still be here in half an hour, but thanks for stopping in. I appreciate it. Alright, so the last of our 3 kings, Yomi. I think Yomi is unironically an S tier character. Not necessarily an S tier antagonist, but I really enjoy the relationship between him and Kurama and how fleshed out that is. And how we keep hearing about the Spirit Fox and, you know, oh, this is what the Spirit Fox used to be like, and how Kurama used to be the powerful one. And Yomi was the underling, and now the roles are reversed. But also the grudge that he holds against Kurama for what he did to him. Like, all of that is incredibly cool. I also like that Yomi's kingdom is the most advanced. It's the most, for lack of a better phrase, it's the most civilized. It feels like an actual place people like live. And Yomi being able, he's basically like the daredevil of the world. You know, he's got no eyesight, but he got 6 freaking ears. I love his horn. His design overall is just cool. And the fact that his eyes are always closed are what really sell his design for me. But it's the relationship between him and Kurama that elevate him to being such an interesting character. In the same way that Hiei and Kurama are both interesting during this arc, Yomi is incredibly fun to watch. Because he has like that political scheming to him. Like everything he's doing is in service of a goal. Like when Yusuke comes to Yomi's city and Yomi has every intention of assassinating Yusuke. That is some top tier political intrigue, ruined only by the fact that Yusuke proposes a tournament. Like, I would have loved to seen more political intrigue from not Chapter Black, from the Three Kings, because Yomi had that in spades. He had Kurama under his thumb to the point where Kurama had to be the one sneaking around, because Kurama knew that if he stepped out of line or pissed Yomi off, Yomi could kill him because he's just that strong. But watching Kurama have to reconcile with the mistakes and rash decisions he made in the past, I love how that came full circle. As for a tattoo tour, yeah, I'm totally down for that. I have one more tattoo session left at the beginning of June before my sleeve is done. And then after that's all healed, I'll most likely do a, if I don't throw it into my first Yu Hakusho video after that, or maybe I'll throw it into the Three Kings video. Or hell, maybe I'll just live stream again and just like play a game or something and chat with you guys, and I'll just give you guys a little tattoo tour. Yukina. I think Yukina is a solidly irrelevant but neat. All of the ladies, with the exception of Genkai and Botan, and of course Makoro, they're basically irrelevant, but they're good characters. They're characters that I appreciate having in some way, form, shape, or fashion, but they just don't really do much. Like, Yukina is adorable. I love her. She's the impetus, and like, she's the inciting incident for she has a whole arc just for rescuing her. And, you know, we get to see how pure-hearted and kind Yukina is, but she doesn't really move the plot forward. She's just there to be an interesting character. That's kind of what the irrelevant but neat tier is for. It's for characters that don't really push the narrative forward, but they're still interesting in their own ways. Thanks, dude. The last we have, because I'm not going to do these last 4, because there's no reason to rank Pooh. I don't remember this guy's name. I can't even tell who this is. And I'm not putting Yusuke on the the list again. Zero is D tier. He's just like how Seiryu is a worse version of Toya. Zero is just a worse version of Hiei. Like, Zero is just, he's exactly Hiei, but not nearly as cool. He's just there to die. He's literally only there to get roasted by the Dragon of the Darkness Flame. To show off that incredibly iconic attack. Yeah, so that's what makes Yukina kind of an interesting one to do, because by herself, she's not exactly the most relevant character, but it's her proximity to Hiei's storyline. But that's what makes doing tier lists like this so hard in general, because a lot of these characters are interconnected. So I'm trying to be as fair as I can to both like people's designs, how they impact the story, how they impact other characters. She's mostly there to elevate Hiei as a character, but on her own, I don't think she's really all that relevant. So, I mean, arguably, there's a couple of people in this tier that if you remove them from the tier or from the story in general, it does change the story. Like, you can't really remove Keiko or Yukina. So I guess in that sense, it's fair to move them up to D tier. because every one of these characters can be wholly replaced and it wouldn't change the story. Like, these characters could, like, if I were to tell you that this lady was Kuroko, like the spirit detective before Sensui, and this character didn't exist, it wouldn't matter. Yeah. But I would say it's fair to move these two to D tier because taking them out of the story does change the story. Whereas if you were to take these characters out, you could just insert any other character and it'd be perfectly fine. But who was I even talking about? Oh yeah, I was talking about Zero. He's just there so that he can use Dragon of the Darkness Flame. That's literally it. So for the most part, this is our tier list. This is kind of how I feel. Like, this, all of this can just change randomly depending on how I'm feeling, or how like if I'm watching something, or if I watched something recently. But for the most part, this is kind of how I feel about all the characters. I do like all the characters. Like, don't let me fool you into thinking that I dislike these characters, especially if they're in lower tiers, because I like them all. They're just, some are dude shows up to get smoked, literally. Yeah, 100%. So I'm almost positive that there are characters you guys don't agree with placement, like Hiei. I've had to explain why Hiei's in B tier so many times already, but this is where I stand. Tier lists are completely subjective, that we're just here to have fun. But I'm curious to know what you guys think. I'm curious to know where you guys will put certain characters. But yeah, I'm basically done. What time is it? Oh my goodness. We've been rolling for a hot minute. I didn't expect it to take this long. But simultaneously, it was fun to just do like an unscripted thing for the first time. Because like, if this was a scripted video, it would have been way more edited, much shorter. My thoughts would have been way more streamlined. But here we are. I'm glad you guys came out. Yeah, the Three Kings video is a hefty project because of what I'm doing, and there are a couple surprises in store for that video that I really wish I could tell you guys, but I can't because I want the surprise to really hit. But though I want to be optimistic and say it'll be done soon, I'm going to be cautious and say it'll be sometime mid-summer, just because I have a lot going on with work and with my personal life. Like, I have social obligations and so on and so forth. I'm also running my own D&D campaign, which takes a lot of time to prep for each week, so that eats up time that I should be putting into doing videos. But I'm definitely hard at work on the Three Kings video. And thank you. Like, I'm not really one to stream. I do want to start dipping my toes into streaming more often, whether it's playing games or watching videos with you guys, or just hanging out and chilling. So I might make this a regular thing on Saturdays, where I can like update you guys on progress on videos, or just chat with you guys, or play games. Hell, if you guys want to play games with me, that'd be fun. Don't forget that I'm more active on Discord. So if you guys ever feel like just popping in to see what the hell's going on, feel free to pop into the Discord. Between in a few minutes on 100 years, yeah. That does summon. Like I said in the beginning of my Chapter Black video, I have the same posting habits and consistency of an AOL internet connection. Like, because I used to post twice a month, and the videos were like 12 to 15, maybe 17 minutes long, and they were like small discussion videos, like my Trigun one. But then work got really heavy, and I just didn't have time to like watch anime, take notes, and then edit a video twice a month. I didn't have time for it, and I was burning myself out. So I figured it's probably best to just stop committing to a timetable and just being like, hey, I hate to say it, but like the videos will be out when they're ready. But in the meantime, before the Three Kings video, I do want to put out maybe a couple of videos between now and then. There's one video that I'm actually working on right now in like concurrent to the Three Kings video. It's a bit shorter, more lighthearted, but it's taking a bit of research because the thing that I'm trying to do, I'm not the most proficient in. Like, I don't have the most knowledge of, so I have to kind of brush up on that and ask a bunch of people that are more knowledgeable. But it is a Yu Yu Hakusho video, so it'll be an interesting departure from the kinds of videos I do. But I hope you guys had fun. It was fun chatting with you guys, and we will do this again soon. Maybe we'll have to figure out what the next stream should be. I might just play games and just chat with you guys, because I still have games I need to finish. Like, I'm 150 hours into Elden Ring, and I'm still playing. I'm still on my first run. But I hope you guys have a good rest of your weekend. Feel free to come hop into the Discord and just chat it up with whoever happens to be there at the time. And I will catch you guys sometime in the near future. Oh dang, all the way from Poland, huh? Cheers, bud. Remember to take care of yourselves and others while you guys are enjoying your weekend. And I will see you guys soon.